Today I'm going to show you how I'm going to make some bookshelves that look very like this one, which is from Kage. And I'm not going to do them exactly the same way because I don't have quite the materials that I need to do that. I'm going to use the materials that I already have, which is what I intend on doing in making all the doll furniture that I'm going to make for my Keystone Dollhouse. But many of the pieces I'm going to try to reproduce exactly or as close to the product as I possibly can get. And on these bookshelves, I'm going to do a few things that are a little bit different. Now what I'm doing here is I had a piece of junk wood, two pieces actually, the same size, that were part of a vintage toy box. I don't know what they were used for, probably building blocks or something. And I'm using balsa wood to divide the front of the bookshelf up. And I'm just taking a Q-tip to get rid of the excess glue. And what you see is the backs or the bindings of the books is actually that piece of straw that is clipped and then cut in half, and then I painted with golden paint. And I used a red and a blue, a kind of ochre yellow, mustardy ochre yellow, and a green color to make the backs of the books that will be in the bookshelf. And I'm using some wooden beads that I already had, and I'm gluing those on the bottom for feet. So you see it's a very simple construction. And then I'm going to paint the wood. But first of all, I just have to get this glued on. And there we go. Let that dry. And then I'll be able to paint it. And as I said, I'm going to make two. I'm going to make them just the same. And they're going to go on either place of the fireplace I made. Now, I've gotten that first one fairly finished, but not quite. I have to take the books out and paint the backs on them, and I have to paint the bookshelf itself. I have to finish the spines, in other words. They're not just going to be plain. And I'll show you how I do it. I'm actually just cutting that piece of straw and then painting it. And that was the only way that I could do it where I thought it would be successful, because on the original bookshelf that's similar to this, it's all solid wood and it's been carved, and then pieces of wood have been put on. But as I said, I don't have the tools or the materials to do that at this point. And I want to use what I already have instead of going out and buying a bunch of new stuff. So here I'm just mixing up some more paint, and I'm going to paint the back of the bookshelf in a matte black golden paint. I'm using all golden paint for this. I have a lot of golden paint, so I might as well use it, and it's good stuff. And so I'll just finish that up. And then when that dries, I will paint the outside of the bookshelf. And of course, I've speeded this up quite a bit. And I saved my paint. So the fireplace mantle had the same color on it. I'm just going to add a little bit more red to it because on that wood, it just came out a little gray looking. And of course, I'm using leveling gel to mix with the paint and a little bit more water. There we go. And this does have somewhat of a sheen when it dries, but that doesn't bother me. I think it's appropriate to the type of furniture that will be in that house. And it's not a very shiny surface that comes off, but there is a little bit of a sheen with the leveling gel. I'm just painting in some of the cracks, trying to remember to stay in camera, which is hard for me because I have a tendency to draw my work close to myself when I work, and I have to get used to not doing that. And I'm just going to paint around. And as I said, these two blocks that I'm using as the bookshelf are approximately the same size as the Kage bookshelves. I think they were part of a vintage toy block set, And I have a bunch of little pieces of waste wood that are like that are probably from the 1950s, maybe 60s. And I found them at a garage sale many years ago. And I've used them gradually. And I think now that I'm making doll furniture, I'm going to be using more of this sort of thing. Yeah, and I'm glad I kept them. And I'm just going to go around and paint the whole thing. And make sure I paint those beads wooden beads that I glued on as the feet. And there we go. And then the next step will be to take the spines of the books that are made out of the straws, and they're just paper straws. I've had them for a long time, and I kept them, as I keep a lot of these little things. And I'm just going to take some gold marker. I did use a little bit of white paint on the backs, and I used some black marker. And I also used black marker on the front of those doors that you see that are rectangular shape. And now I'm just going to finish up putting these little bindings, not bindings, spines, book spines, glued in with tacky glue. And I like tacky glue. It dries clear and it's very sticky, thus the name Tacky Glue. So once you put it in, it's, I could stand this little bookshelf up and these little spines won't fall off. And I'm just going to put them in with some tweezers. I'm just painting a little glue on the sides. They're half rounds. And I'm trying to mix up the colors a little bit so that there's some variation. I don't know if you noticed in the first image that I showed you of the Kage bookshelf, there's 4 blue, there's 4 yellow, there's 4 green, and there's 4 red, and they're stuck together in the bookshelf. And I decided I wouldn't do it that way, that I'd mix up the sizes a little bit and just make it look a little bit different. But I think it still captures the same feel of the Kage, whatever you want to call it, antique 1930s dollhouse furniture. So I'm going to just move along here and get these glued in. I'll have a couple left over that I can use in the next bookshelf. I'm just painting along the edge and just sticking them right in. This is a very easy project. There's a lot of ways you could do this. For me, this just was using up the materials that I had, and that made it a very easy decision to do it the way I did it. Some people have really good woodworking skills and have the tools, and I don't have the tools, and I don't have the materials. And at the price of repeating myself again, I do like to use what I have. I'm very thrifty, and I do like to take the waste products that I have and reuse them so they don't end up in the system again. I don't like plastic. I don't think any of us do anymore, but well, what are you going to do? Okay, so I'm not going to preach about plastic. Don't worry. Okay. These, by the way, are coffee stir sticks, and I don't know if I mentioned that in the beginning. I think I said it was balsa wood, but I do use balsa wood. It's just not in the area you're seeing me put these now. These are coffee stir sticks that I had, and I'm just clipping off the ends of them and measuring them and putting them in. Now I'm using the balsa wood, which is for the little cupboard below. And I'm just doing it. I'm not going to measure it with a ruler. I'm eyeballing it. I do very well with eyeballing things, and it gets me moving quicker. So I'll just use this ruler as a straight edge. I'll cut it out and then glue it in. And that's not moving past some kind of a, I don't know what's going on with this piece of balsa wood, but I have to use a X-Acto knife to cut it there. That's better. And I'll just glue that in with some wood glue. And then the feet will go on. Just making sure that everything is lined up so they look the same. Because as I said before, I think I said this before, I'm going to put these on either side of the fireplace that I made last week. And so I want them to look the same, except the book arrangement will be different. All the shelves will have a bit different book arrangement, just for the sake of variety. Okay. And now I'll glue the feet on, which are just beads, wooden beads. I have a lot of wooden beads, so I'm going to use them. Original bookshelf did not have these type of feet, but since I had them already, I wanted to use them. And I think it still maintains a similar look to the original Kage bookshelf, so I really want to maintain that late 1930s look for my furniture for my dollhouse, which is a 1936 to 37 Keystone of Boston dollhouse. And soon I'll be doing a video on restoring that as well. So now I'm just painting the bookshelf back with some matte black paint. I'll let that dry, and I will continue making these spines out of the straw, just cutting them in half. And I need about 8 each, 6 to 8 each, so for each shelf. And I make them different heights slightly. And also, if I squeeze this straw together, half straw together, I can make what looks like a smaller binding after it's painted. So I'll give them a couple coats of paint. I'm sticking with those colors that were used, except for I added a brown spine. The original was primary blue, primary yellow, primary red, green, and that was it. And I have this mustardy yellow, same kind of green, same kind of red, same kind of blue, but I also added a burnt sienna brown to the books, just for some variety. And it takes a couple coats to cover that black and white design on those straws. And I'm just seeing if they fit and trimming them if they're not, if they're a little too tall. That's all I'm doing here. I have a tendency to pull my work close to myself, and I'm trying really hard not to do that. But I think you can see what I'm doing. I'm just giving them a little trim to make sure they're the right height. And that's pretty easy since they're just paper. Okay. I'm just finishing painting them. I did find one white straw that was a little bit slimmer, and so I cut it and then folded it back to make it look like a book set. So the spines would be the same size. So I'll have a couple of little book sets in these shelves. And I have a green set too. one more blue spine, and then I think we're finished. Just put a little bit of white in there and brighten it up a bit. And now I'm just adding the outside wood stain look, and I'll just paint the whole thing just like I did the first one, and they should dry to be the exact color. And then when this is dry, if it needs another touching up, I'll go around the whole thing again, just to make sure everything's covered. Okay, I'm getting there. And as I said, I'll go back over this again to make sure if I've missed anything that it gets well covered. I'll let those dry, and these I may have to give a second coat of paint to. Some of them look like they're just fine, but I don't want any of that design, as I said before, showing through, so I'll just give them a quick touch up. And then after that, I will take the gold marker, the black marker, and a little bit of paint and finish the spines on them. But I lost some of my video, so I don't have an example of me painting them here as I did before. And earlier in the video, I think you can see me using the gold paint and the marker. And I'll outline that cupboard base, and also I have pins that I made the little handles with, and then I also put some of that gold paint marker on it, and you'll see it in a moment. Okay, there it's finished, and the glue is not quite dried on the handles on that one bookcase. But there's the chair I made, and the fireplace I made last week. And I also made some extra books out of balsa wood and those same straws and painted them, so I had extra books that go with the bookshelf. And you can see the glue's not dried on those two little handles, but it'll dry clear. And I have three book sets in this one. And this was the first one that I made. And it's the same as the other as far as the cabinet is concerned. I just rearranged the books differently. And these are going to go in my dollhouse. I'm going to probably, for the next project, I'm going to make a grandfather clock, a mantle clock for the fireplace, and a globe. That's what I'm aiming for. So I will be coming back with those videos next week. And I also am going to finish my book box, hopefully, I hope, for Auto of the Silver Hand. So I'll be also finishing some Christmas ornaments too. So look for those videos, and thank you for watching. And I hope you have a great weekend. Bye-bye.